Good evening, welcome, and thank you for attending tonight's Marion League of Women Voters Candidates Night. I am Beth Babbage, and beside me is R.J. Bicking. We are co-presidents of the Marion League of Women Voters. We invite you all to participate in a long-standing great tradition of American democracy, the political debate.
The League of Women Voters is a national organization with 787 local units. We are nonprofit and nonpartisan. We do not endorse or support parties or political candidates. Our purpose is to encourage all citizens to become informed and to participate in their government. Tonight's Candidates Night is one of League's voter education projects.
We are delighted to recruit new members. League membership is open to all citizens of voting age, male and female. Please visit our membership table for information about League's activities and projects. We encourage radio listeners and television viewers to call R.J. Bicking at 740-389-5356 or talk with any of our League members. Or our email is marionleague@yahoo.com.
Also, at our League tables are copies of the voter guide we published last week in the Marion Star. You will find helpful information about candidates and a sample ballot you can use to check your choices and bring with you when you vote. Voter guides are also available at the Marion Public Library and various locations around town.
Now some thank yous. We are so grateful to WWGH for hosting and broadcasting tonight, to WWGH's Scott Spears, our debate moderator, to the Marion Star for co-sponsoring publication of the League Voter Guide, to Harding High School's videotaping crew and their telecommunications teacher, John Mullins, to Time Warner Cable for telecasting Candidates Night on Channel 96-2 on the weekend before Election Day, which is Tuesday, November 4. To Joanne Radwin Zimmerman, League of Women Voters Public Relations Chair, for her work organizing Candidates Night.
We will also invite you to visit the election campaign literature table. All candidates and ballot issue representatives have been welcome to place literature there and to speak one-on-one with the audience members before and after the debate. To begin, we will introduce the uncontested candidate. And our uncontested candidate tonight is Judge Pregel, and if he will stand and wave to everyone.
Thank you, Judge Regali.
Thank you.
We welcome the contested candidates who have come to participate in our League of Women Voters Candidates Night. We'll meet them now as we turn the program over to WWGH's Scott Spears, our debate moderator.
Thank you so much, RJ and Beth. I thank you for that. And now we will begin the debate tonight. We're going to start with the ground rules for this debate. We'll go over those right now. The candidates for each office will be introduced in alphabetical order, and each one will be given 90 seconds to give biographical information or to speak to a specific issue. No one will be allowed to speak for an absent candidate. Questions from the audience must be written on index cards provided by the League. Only one question per card. The candidates or office should be designated at the top of the card. League members will collect the cards. Questions should be confined strictly to the issues and not personalities. The use of signs, gestures, or electronic text messaging devices to communicate with the candidates during the debate is prohibited. The Marion League of Women Voters reserves the right to screen all questions, both from the studio audience and from the radio audience. If a question is addressed to all candidates running for a specific office, each candidate will have 1 minute to respond. No rebuttals. If a question is addressed to a specific candidate, candidate A has 1 minute to respond. Candidate B, the opposing candidate, if they desire, has a 1 minute rebuttal. And then the original candidate has a 30-second wrap-up. If questions are addressed to all candidates in a given race, candidates will alternate answering first. In a contested race, if a contested candidate is not present, the moderator shall present without editorial comment the factual reasons, if any, given by the candidate for not attending Candidates Night. And those are the ground rules for tonight's debate. Tonight, we have the Marion County Commissioner race between Ken Stuyvesant, Republican, and Robert Whalen, Democrat. The race between state representative in the 86th District, John Allen Babick, the Democrat, and Dorothy Polenda, the Republican. And finally, the state representative of the 87th District, Jeffrey Leahart, who is not able to attend tonight due to a change in my work schedule. I may not be able to attend. Sincerely, Jeff Leahart. And Jeff McLean, the Republican candidate. And now we will have the candidates' opening statements, starting with Mr. Stuyvesant.
Thank you, Scott, and thank you, the League of Women Voters, for having us here this evening to enjoy this evening with our people of Marion County. And just a little bit about me. As you know, I am the county commissioner now. I'm married for 46 years, have 2 daughters, 5 grandchildren, and lifelong resident of Marion County. I guess one of my greatest assets is I've served in a lot of different avenues and committees in Marion County and statewide and national with the pork producers, and spent 17 years on the Fair Board and 9 years of wonderful time on the school board, and was president of that and president of the Ohio Pork Producers, building my way up to gaining the knowledge I felt I need to be a public servant. That's what I call this job. It's not a political position or a job to me. It's a community servant in just another facet than I've done in the past. And I have 4 basic things I kind of lead my life from, and that's faith, family, friends, and the future of Marion County as your commissioner. Thank you, and I'll turn it over to Mr. Whalen.
Thank you, Mr. Stuyvesant. Mr. Whalen, your opening statement.
My name is Robert Whalen. I am the Democratic candidate for Marion County Commissioner. I'm a 1998 graduate of Marion Harding High School. I've lived here 31 of my 34 years. I am married. My wife Molly is in the audience tonight. I have 4 beautiful children, 3 of whom attend Heritage Elementary in the River Valley School District. One was just born the day after Christmas in 2013, so she's got a few years to go before she has to worry about schooling. We're going to get into the nuts and bolts of why I think you should vote for me throughout tonight. But what I want to do is plead with not only the people here in the audience, but those listening at home. Get out to vote. And this is probably the biggest thing that no matter what anybody says up here is the most important. Whether you're voting for one side or the other, it's our civic duty to vote. And a lot of times we look at a presidential year as the year when we see 75 or 80% voter turnout. 300 million people in this country. You have a bigger chance of making an impact with your vote when it is local, when it is the county or the state. So make your voice heard and get out in 2 weeks and vote. Again, one way or the other, just get out and vote.
Thank you, Mr. Whalen. Mr. Babick, your opening statement.
Thank you very much, Scott. Well, first of all, I'm brand new to politics, so this is a brand new thing for me to sit here. It's a great honor, first of all, to be here with you. I think it's important for me to give you a brief biography, but I also wanted to say why I'm running, so I think I can get that done. I'm the son of a divorced mom who raised 5 of us alone. I particularly can understand what a woman who has basically minimal child support goes through to try to get by day-to-day in society. I myself worked my way through college. I worked 30 hours a week at Burger King and graduated with a degree in political science from Youngstown State University. I later went on to a degree in education from Ohio State University, but I never forgot my roots. After 18 years in the private sector in 2009, I lost my job. And that was a real indication of what millions of Americans were going through at the time. And I began to ponder what our elected leaders are doing and what ordinary citizens like I was doing to try to find a job. And while elected representatives make $60,000 a year part-time, they're opposed to increasing the minimum wage for working citizens that work at Burger King or McDonald's. Lastly, SB 5 as another attempt to attack the middle class.
Mr. Babick, thank you. Ms. Polenda, your opening statement.
Well, good evening. It's wonderful to see so many familiar faces in the audience. And again, I want to echo my thanks to the League of Women Voters for hosting this event. It's so important for our community to get to know the candidates that they're going to be voting for in less than 2 weeks. I was raised on a farm in Union County. Our family has lived in Union County for 6 generations, and my husband and I now have returned to that farm, which is a working grain farm. Work and service to the community was always a part of our daily life. And like my opponent, I worked my way through first college and law school by working minimum wage jobs in a restaurant, in as many different jobs as I could work, and gave me a real appreciation for the fact that through training and education, I wanted something better for myself. My 3 children, Brian, who's 30, who's a lawyer in California, Doug, who's 28, who is in cancer research and development at Children's Hospital, and my daughter Zoe, all have worked minimum wage jobs in an effort to supplement the income and the needs that they have to pay for some of their schooling and other supplies. So well aware of minimum wage jobs and the fact that it provides an incentive for those in the minimum wage jobs to better themselves with training and education. Very proud to serve the residents of Marion County. I've been your state representative for since 2011.
Thank you, Ms.
Thank
Polenda. And finally, Mr. McLean.
Thank you for coming tonight. My wife Barb and I have been married for 34 years. We have 3 adult children, a son and 2 daughters, and we have 4, soon to be 5, granddaughters. So that's the best job I'll ever have. 6 years ago, I stood before you and asked for your vote. And I made one promise that I would work to the best of my ability. So how have we done? I've been blessed by Speaker Batchelor to be put in positions of responsibility. A number of times I was the Vice Chair of Finance for 3 years, which is the most powerful committee. It deals with all the spending in Ohio. I'm currently the Chairman of Ways and Means, which is the other side of that coin. It deals with taxation fees, all the revenue of the state. I also serve on the Controlling Board, several budget conference committees, and I'm on the Fatherhood Commission. And since we took the majority back and Governor Kasich came in, Ohio is number 1 in the Midwest and number 5 in the country in creating jobs from the U.S. Department of Labor. We've increased funding over $1 billion to schools in the last biennium. We closed an $8 billion hole in the budget and balanced it, also while giving over $3 billion in income tax cuts to all Ohioans. We are fixing the roads and the bridges throughout Ohio and the district now, not in 20 years. So we've acted responsibly, led effectively, and taken better care of our neediest citizens. Given re-election, I will continue to work to make you proud. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McLean. I do want to let the listening audience know that you can call in with questions. The telephone number is area code 740-383-9944. Again, that's 740-383-9944. We will now go to our first question of the night, and this is to all state representatives. Talk about one important issue that faces Ohio. What do you feel needs to be done to work on the problem? And we will start with Mr. McLean.
Well, we have any number of issues. One of them that we were dealing with throughout the state of Ohio was drug addiction. This impacts us through the legal system, it impacts us through our medical system, and impacts us because we've got a lot of places, there are jobs today in Ohio that they can't be filled because people can't pass a drug test. A number of things that we've been doing is we put about $100 million in the last budget that helps to give opportunities, get these folks in counseling and get them in places away from where they're reverting back to the same habits. We are also working through Medicaid to do a number of other issues that we're trying to help folks to get a step up and out. One of the things that I was able to do, we put a pilot project in that Crawford and Hardin counties are part of it. We are doing Vivitrol with kids, young men and women that are in jail. And Vivitrol is not an opiate, and it becomes something that they get a shot, and it really is giving them a chance, and especially in Crawford County, it's something that's really working out.
Thank you, Mr. McLean. Ms. Pelinda.
Education is probably the most critical issue facing the Ohio legislature today. You know, we talk about jobs and job creation, and there are things that the legislature has an ability to impact, but the Ohio Constitution vests the Ohio legislature with the job of educating Ohio's children. Most of you in this room know two words very well, and that's Common Core. Common Core has become a very toxic issue in the state of Ohio. I serve on the Rules and Reference Committee, and we are hearing House Bill 597, repeal of Common Core. I encourage all of you here tonight to attend these public hearings because the arguments on both sides of this issue are impassioned, well thought out, and give us lots to think about in terms of how we address the issue that nearly 50% of our graduating seniors leave the school unprepared for the workforce or higher education. It's an issue that's not resolved easily, but we are committed to solving the problem.
Thank you, Ms. Pelinda. Mr. Babick.
Well, if I could use a prop, and I'm not using an electronic device, this is an insulin, I'm insulin-dependent diabetic, and should we reverse the Affordable Care Act or refuse to go ahead with Medicaid expansion, that means people like me with diabetes won't be able to afford our medication, simply put. Second issue that I'm really concerned that the supermajority in the Ohio General Assembly is seriously entertaining plans to do that. One other thing I'm concerned about is the women's clinics that have been closing. Ms. Pelinda voted to prohibit rape crisis centers from referring clients to providers who counsel and refer for abortion. So a woman that is raped in a situation like that is confronted with that situation, and then she's told by our legislator that she can't be helped in full methods.
Thank you, Mr. Babick. Now move on to our next question. This is for both candidates in the commissioner race. Please talk about one important issue facing Marion County and what can be done to work on the problem. We'll start with Mr. Stuyvesant.
There are several issues that I continually toil over in my mind, but as everyone knows, the economy is not coming back as fast as it went down, I guess. I strive every day to find new ways. I think one of them that we're working on right now is with the Marion Industrial Center. If we can get an overpass there, we'll allow more traffic for not only automobiles but trucks to get to 23. And then if we show them we're moving that way, I think there'll be some large warehouse buildings put up out there. Mr. Graham has just purchased the government land behind it, so it gives him more room to expand. His train traffic's really increased there, and I think that's one of the great things I'd like to do in the next 4 years.
Thank you, Mr. Stuyvesant. Mr. Whalen.
I think it was mentioned, but locally, it's got to be the drug addiction issue that we face in Marion County. What we've tried to do over the last few years to combat this is arrest our way out of the problem. We've tried to get the drug dealers off the streets instead of getting to the core of what the issue is, and that's the users. Drug dealing is one of those things where if we arrest one, two more will take the spot. So we got to get to those people that are using. The problem is that right now in Marion County, we're not seeing enough rehabilitation centers, inpatient care facilities that can take care of the epidemic as we see it here in Marion County. I know of at least 2 people that have overdosed in the last year waiting to get into a clinic. And they had sought help, but they didn't get in fast enough. One of them died, one of them lived, but they shouldn't have to wait to get the help they seek. And we will not solve the drug epidemic until we start helping those
Thank
users.
you, Mr. Whalen. Our next question this evening is for State Representative McLean. Do you think Planned Parenthood does any positive service for women in Ohio?
They do health care, but we get to this, we talk about women's issues. It is about abortion. We have done a number of things. One of the things we did was change the rules that if you were a public hospital, you could not sign an agreement with an abortion clinic. If you believe, as I do, that life begins at conception, there's no other option for us to make sure that we're trying to stop abortion. We have done a number of things through Medicaid and a lot of other areas. There is there is a great deal of access for poor women to get health care. It doesn't have to be here. Planned Parenthood does do a little of that, but they also do a lot of abortion, and that's what we fight.
Thank you, Mr. McLean. Our next question is for all candidates. Tell us your stand on gun control, and we will start with Mr. Whalen.
I'm not sure really what that has to do with the Marion County Commissioner's race, as we really don't have much to do with gun control. That being said, there is a Second Amendment right that says the right to bear arms, and that's a fundamental right, just the same as freedom of speech. That does not mean, however, that we can't look at ways to curb the sales of guns in terms of whose hands they get into, background checks, especially at gun shows and internet sales. I think we need to be very careful who we sell guns to in this country anymore. But again, we really don't deal with that, I don't think, on a daily basis at the Marion County Commissioner's Office.
Mr. Babick.
Oh, I just heard on the news today that there was another Columbine-type threat to a school up in Twinsburg just today. They had intervened into that situation. You know, I think I'm just going to reserve the rest of my time for my opponents to figure out how anybody can be opposed to sensible gun control legislation that would keep the guns out of felons and criminals. I'll reserve the rest of my time.
Mr. McLean.
We need responsible gun ownership. America is a country that has guns, and for the most part, the vast majority of the folks handle them responsibly. It was mentioned about Columbine and some of these are mental health issues. These are not gun issues. The folks that are, and it was also mentioned about keeping the guns out of the hands, doesn't matter what the law is. Those folks are going to break the law and they're going to try to get them. We need to make sure, as people in our country, I live in Upper Sandusky. I live on a street that probably everybody has 5 guns. We don't shoot each other because we respect life. It's about respect for life, and we need to make sure that we do have responsible gun ownership, and I'm supportive of concealed carry.
Mr. Stuyvesant.
Yes, I agree with Jeff. I mean, it's responsible. The guns don't shoot people. The people that own the guns shoot them, and I've had a lot of issues in the last 4 years, but that hadn't been one of them that's come across the commissioner's desk. But I believe everybody should be entitled to the bearing of arms and continue that, because there's a lot of good people out there that need to protect themselves from the bad guys, I guess you could say, that are not responsible citizens of this United States of America.
Ms. Belinda.
I received my first gun for my 8th birthday from my father, and with that, ongoing life lessons about how to use it responsibly and how to treat others with respect. I've owned guns all my life. I never knew that there was a gun cabinet. We didn't own a gun cabinet because we were taught from the start how to care for guns, how to use them, and how to store them. I'm a strong supporter of our Second Amendment rights. I have supported and sponsored legislation to that effect, and I will continue to do so.
Thank you. And I do want to remind the listening audience again, you can call in questions right now by dialing 740-383-9944. That's 740-383-WWGH. People are manning the phones right now. Our next question is also for all the candidates. Illegal drugs are a growing problem. What can you, as a public official, do to help solve the problem? And we will start with Mr. McLean.
Well, we've done a number of things already through the leadership of Senator Burke. We went after the pill mills a couple of years ago, along with Terry Johnson from Scioto County, and basically that was just the opiates that folks are getting over the counters, and they were leading some other things. One of the things we were so effective at on that, though, is we've pushed, I shouldn't say we've pushed people, they have moved to heroin, some other things. We need to make sure that we're trying to break the cycle. That's why we've had a lot of the help with the addictions and things. But there are folks that we need to put in jail. We've had a lot of discussions about this, trying to figure out the proper way to do it. And we don't want to put users in jail. I mean, the casual users, we need to give them help. But the users, they need to go away. And a couple of the other things we're doing, we're trying to figure out ways that we can get them in an area that's not necessarily the regular prison population, because there are differences in the crimes for the most part.
Okay. Ms. Polenda?
Earlier this year, Speaker Batchelder appointed me to chair a study committee to travel the state to look at the drug epidemic from a law enforcement perspective. We held 4 hearings, and one of those hearings was right here in Marion County, where we heard from citizens, experts from around the state as to what the drug epidemic looks like and what we need to do about it. I want to say here that we should be so proud of the efforts here in Marion County by Judge Ballinger, Judge Fragale, and Judge Alspaugh in recognizing and being proactive and really forward-thinking about how we address this problem. We need to address it from 3 standpoints: education, prevention, and treatment. And we need to think the way that these very forward-thinking judges are thinking all across the state, from the standpoint that incarcerating addicts is not the way to solve the problem, that we, as Representative McLean said, we need to punish the ones who are bringing it into our state, not those who are addicted.
Thank you, Ms. Polenda. Mr. Whalen?
As I mentioned earlier, I think it goes back to rehabilitation centers and treatment facilities. The problem with that is, how do you fund those type of things? Nobody's going to disagree that we need them, but we got to find the money for them. One thing I like to see maybe happen is that some of the money that goes into the law enforcement coffers from drug seizures and auctions be put into a fund to help build those rehabilitation centers. Along the same lines, there are plenty of grants out there that can also be obtained. I know Adam H. And people like that who are working their rears off trying to combat this. But the problem is that there's more users than there are hands to help. So it's going to take a community effort, though. No matter which way we go and no matter which way we go about doing it, it's going to take a community effort, and rehabilitation centers are the key.
Mr. Stuyvesant?
Yes, I've been fortunate enough to see in the past year that Marion County, through Judge Ballinger and all the other judges and courts and adult probation and the young probation, Marion County's been fortunate enough to receive over $1.2 million to combat this problem. And I think we have a lot of ongoing programs at this time. Hopefully we see results. I know it's early in the seed has been planted, I guess you could say, and we continuously want to help them all that we can. I hope they continue to receive these grants so we can do this in Marion County and surrender some of these drugs. I think our biggest thing is we need to go to the source of where they're coming into Marion County, and that takes a lot of funding, and all the auctions and so forth, all that money goes back into MARMAT, and they do use that to combat the drug problem in Marion County.
Mr. Babbitt?
Well, I think we ought to look at, we ought to do a laser focus on what the real drug problem is, which is the heroin epidemic is invading our counties here in rural America. But I think we ought to remember that when we talk about illegal drugs, we're also talking about marijuana. And then the question arises, should we consider the possibility of alleviating the pain and suffering of so many people who could benefit from medical use of marijuana? And if we spend all of our time going after the small-time dealers for marijuana, then we're not really focusing in on the real problem, which is the heroin epidemic.
Thank you, Mr. Babbitt. Our next question is for the commissioner's race. What can you, as a commissioner, do to help correct the pollution problem in the Little Scioto River? Mr. Stuyvesant.
I'm glad you asked that question. Tomorrow at 8 a.m., there's a meeting at the county building with the Army Corps of Engineers are coming up here, and I helped, and Dorothy helped with that also, a 729 grant to do a study on the Scioto, and they're coming up tomorrow to explain all the steps that Marion County, which encumbered, I believe it was 12 counties that the Scioto runs through, and they were all in Marion County twice to explore this opportunity of a 729 grant. And tomorrow morning, Jamie from the Corps of Engineers in West Virginia will be at the county building in the prospect room at 8 o'clock to set up all the steps that we need to go through to start this project and move on to alleviate that problem. Hopefully we can give some help to those people in Layru, Prospect, Green Camp. Thank you.
Mr. Wade.
Well, obviously, as my opponent just mentioned, it's teamwork, and it's working with various agencies and various counties throughout the watershed for the Little Scioto River. It's a problem that has been on the block now for years, and unfortunately, it's taking way too long for it to be corrected. It's nice to see that something finally is being done, as long as that carries through with it. But we continue to have to work with multiple agencies, multiple counties.
And when you start doing that, there's a lot of feet dragging. There's a lot of political red tape. And I think some of that red tape needs to be cut so that we can move on swifter than what we have so far.
Our next question is for all the state representatives. How is the waste produced after fracking being handled? And we'll start with Ms. Polenda.
Well, we are learning so much almost on a daily basis about this brand new industry in Ohio, which is for the first time being able to extract this natural gas and oil from these shale deposits. As Governor Kasich said, we need to do it smart, we need to do it carefully, we need to do it with a mind to our future generations in terms of their health and the economic health of Ohio. We have to separate out truth from fiction in terms of the data and information we're receiving. And I think to date that Ohio has taken very conservative measures in terms of waste containment. We continue as a legislative body to call on the best minds in the industry to help us make future policy with regards to safe practices for the waste removal.
Mr. Babick.
Well, what I noticed was missing from Representative Polanda's answer was that she doesn't believe in local control on whether or not you should have fracking within your own neighborhoods. Should that be something up to individual voters to decide whether or not they would like to have fracking in their own backyard? I don't believe that if the state wants to make that decision on behalf of every Ohioan, I can't support that. I believe in local input, local control over what happens in your own backyard. Now, I would agree fracking is a brand new industry. It's not something that we can completely reject offhand, but I do believe we need clearly some more environmental studies to be also included with any expert testimony in favor of fracking.
Mr. McLean.
Well, as Representative Polanda talked about, the House and the Senate and the Governor have done some things already to make sure that we are protecting the water locally and making sure that it is handled safely. The issue becomes what you do with the waste after that. And one of the things is, as I think Representative Polanda also mentioned, things are changing daily. There are some tests actually going on right now where there are some folks that are close to where it's almost, when they get done filtering it out, it's almost the same as the water coming right out of the river. So as technology goes forward, we're going to get better at this, but it is a definite concern right now because we have a lot of that waste and we're putting it in a lot of salt mines. But it will get better, and as we continue to do these things, it'll be handled safely, and we'll continue to stay on top of it.
Do want to let the listening audience know again that you can call in your questions right now, 740-383-9944. That's 740-383-9944. The next question is for all the state representatives. Why do you support or oppose Common Core? And we'll start with Ms. Polenda.
Thank you. As I mentioned, I currently serve on the House Rules and Reference Committee, which is hearing House Bill 597, repeal of Common Core, and I support that bill. In other words, I support the repeal of Common Core. A year ago, I held a town hall in this town and invited all interested persons to come and learn about this issue. It was very poorly attended, and I think that Common Core was really not on people's radar at that point in time. From that moment on, I began visiting schools in Marion County, elementary schools, middle schools, high schools, and even technical schools to understand firsthand what the issues were. And what I saw was a real disconnect in terms of what was being taught and the students' ability to absorb it. Most of biggest concern and what I hear on both sides of the issue is that there are way too many tests. And so I'm looking now at this point as a committee member on what we can agree upon, and there definitely need to be some changes, new standards, a new way of teaching in Ohio.
Mr. McLean.
Well, I learned a long time ago that you don't really take a stand until you know exactly what you're going to be voting on. I am not on the committee, as Representative Polanda is. And she mentioned earlier, too, tonight about the fact that there's so many impassioned witnesses on both sides. You know, the truth is always in the middle somewhere. We have issues that we need to make sure our students are learning. We need to make sure that we are taking into account what the teachers say, and we need to make sure that they're ready for college. Common Core was an effort towards that. There are things that need changed, and I trust the representative and the members in the committee to get to a point where we're going to have something that we can handle, and I'll make a decision on Common Core at that point on that.
Mr. Babick.
Well, the question that I believe was being answered was whether or not we should eliminate Common Core or change and adjust it. And I'm not sure I got my answer on that one. I'm not sure if you did either. If we're going to throw out Common Core, what measurement have we used to measure its success or its failure? How long has Common Core been in existence for us to even have some documentation as to whether or not it's succeeding or not? No, I'm not in favor of throwing out Common Core. I'm in favor of changing Common Core to reflect what teachers are saying in the classroom. I understand that kindergarten class was tested recently, and what information can you get from a kindergarten class? There is too much testing, so I do agree with Representative Polanda on that front. Also, whether or not Common Core is age appropriate. Many times you'll find 7th and 8th graders learning high school level material. So yeah, there can be changes.
Our next question tonight is for the county commissioners, people involved in the county commissioner race. How can county government meet the transportation needs of people who live outside the city of Marion? We'll start with Mr. Stuyvesant.
Well, I know that's been a topic at Envisioning Marion that I participated in until it kind of fell by the wayside. We've done that several times. I think there needs to be some transportation from the main, I call them main villages of such as Morrill, maybe Layru and that, and it goes back to the old thing, and I hate to keep bringing this up, is funding and a way to do it. Hopefully there's someone, I know the Marion City has transit, but it's mostly funded by grants and so forth, but to make it economical for people, I would surely like to try to do something to get those people from Prospect, Waldo, if they need transportation. I know we have very good senior citizens here. They do some transit for some of the seniors, and people need to get to Marion to work too, and that's another big question.
Mr. Whalen.
Yeah, Marion City does have a transit department that is just recently built a entire new system or new building over there on State and corner of State and Church, and it's well equipped. It may be one of those things, kind of like the safety services, where you look at consolidating and asking them to pick up Marion County. But the problem becomes, again, working in Marion County, Marion City. We've seen that hasn't worked so far with the safety services, so you have to question whether it could work there. But that'd be about the best hope we have of doing it efficiently and getting anything accomplished, really, is for us to bring in the city buses, maybe look at purchasing one or two to drive out in the county. But again, you're also limiting those to only business hours, 7:30 in the morning till 5 in the afternoon. So anything after 5 o'clock in the afternoon, you're still going to run into that problem using the current city transportation.
Thank you, Mr. Whalen. Again, we are a live broadcast right now. You can call in any questions you have, 740-383-9944. That's 740-383-9944. Our next question is for all state office candidates. In the past several years, local government funds have been cut drastically by the state. These cuts have had profound effects on schools and community services, such as police and fire, by cutting their budgets. What will you do to restore some of these funds? We'll start with Mr. Babick.
Well, definitely in the direction that we're moving in the state assembly, what we're seeing is more and more cuts. I mean, they talk a lot about local control, yet what they end up doing is they end up cutting the funding necessary for local control of each locality's destiny. I would be in favor of re-establishing the funding levels as to what they were prior to these budget cuts. I think we do have our priorities at stake here, and I think if you look at Marion, if you look at Marysville, they'll tell you the same thing. These cuts are having devastating impacts, especially with schools, and I'm in favor of us looking at the budget and making our priorities straight.
Ms. Polenda.
You know, with every new piece of legislation, we receive what's called a fiscal analysis of it. And I'm always looking at what the impact is on our local governments. And oftentimes, that's an unintended consequence. And we have several bills pending right now where I am a no vote on those bills because of the impact it will have on our local government. We are, as legislators, are always looking for ways to increase local government funding. We recognize the impact that it's had in recent years, even before we became legislators. And we are looking for ways, always, to increase local government funds. With that said, I think that I'm very proud of Marion County and the way that they have dealt with those local government cuts by sharing of services, looking at ways to be creative in terms of working together, county and city governments. And so we need to have a partnership together to be sensitive to those local government cuts.
Mr. McLean.
Well, as I mentioned earlier, actually the school funding is higher now than it has ever been. We added $1 billion. And the townships, it's a little tougher. It hit the townships harder. But when you're talking about counties, cities, villages, the cuts, when the numbers are thrown around, really were only about 2 to 3% of their budgets. And there's been a wonderful study done by the Cincinnati Enquirer that did statewide, looked at all of these issues. And basically their result was that the cities and the counties are doing much better because they had to make some cuts. They had to make the tough choices as the state did. And they are actually better off, and in many cases have more local government funds now than they did then.
Thank you, Mr. McLean. The next question is for our candidates running for county commissioner. What benefits has Marion County received due to increased revenue generated by the sales tax increase? We'll start with Mr. Whalen on that one.
As close as I can tell, we've come closer to balancing the budget. But that's been one talking point that's come up over and over again this past year as I've been running, since I announced my candidacy, is people knew that we needed the money. There can be no doubt that Marion County was struggling for money. It wasn't the fact that the sales tax was there. It was the fact that the county commissioners did not communicate with the public about what the money was going to be spent on, why they needed the money, and depth. And you're talking about dotting the I's and crossing the T's. And people in general say the communication was lacking, and that's been maybe the most talked about problem that I've seen for Marion County. Again, I know that we needed the money, but I also know that in my opponent's 4 years, he's passed 3 sales taxes. Only this last one stuck. So, you got to question what's going to happen in the next 4 years if.
Thank you, Mr. Whalen. Mr. Stuyvesant.
Well, thank you. I guess as county commissioner, there are certain things that need to be funded, and here are just a few of them. And you tell me when you lose local government funding. I was very upset about that when it happened. My first year in, we went from 3 years before that, a $17 million budget, to just about $14 million. So $3 million, you got to do some changes. But we had to cut our services below what people I felt deserved in Marion County. And so, yes, we put our emergency sales tax for 6 months. That got us a little help. And then we put it on the ballot, and it failed by 212 votes. So people are starting to learn that we do need it. And yes, we did put the 0.5% back on this year, and we're going to use 60% for general fund and 40% for capital improvements, and it's being very well spent.
Thank you, Mr. Stuyvesant. The next question is specifically for Mr. Babick. What solutions do you propose to the addiction crisis?
Solutions to the addiction crisis itself relating to drugs?
It says addiction crisis.
Well, as I was saying, when we speak about illegal drugs, we can talk about it carte blanche, illegal drugs, or we can try to pinpoint what are the real problems. It seems like methamphetamines and heroin are probably more of a greater concern for us than is marijuana. So I think that more funding should take place. It should be more interactive with the communities, with churches. I know the Hope Center in Marysville works a lot with addicted people that need jobs. I mean, because let's face it, once you are in jail for a drug, what are your chances of getting a job? So we should work at rehabilitating people.
Ms. Pelinda, you have a 1-minute rebuttal, if desired.
We definitely need to look and take responsibilities as a state for rehabilitation. We have recovery court here in Marion County. That needs to be something that every county looks at, and what we're looking at as a legislature is perhaps a more regional approach so that all 88 counties can benefit from some of the very progressive ideas we have about recovery and rehabilitation. Gary Moore, the director of the Department of Corrections, is saying that in the last 2 years, the offenses have been gone from drugs as being an ancillary offense to drugs being the #1 offense for which someone is incarcerated. Last month, he received 147 new prisoners as a result of drug convictions. That's unsustainable. We need to look at that problem and find new solutions other than prison for the drug addiction problem.
Mr. Babick, you may have a 30-second wrap-up. I think that's an excellent response. I would agree completely with Representative Pelinda's approach. I think we do need to look at alternative ways of dealing with this problem, which is a very perplexing problem.
Thank you. Our next question is for all the state representatives. What is being done with the contaminated waste water in Ohio? We'll start with Ms. Pelinda.
Well, I think that question's already been asked.
Has it been?
I think we've addressed it both with contaminated water from fracking or contaminated water from...
So it's contaminated wastewater in Ohio. Do we have a ruling on that?
Yeah,
Go ahead
I
and
think
skip it?
that's already been
Okay.
addressed.
Well, we do want to remind everybody out there who's listening right now that you can call in a question by dialing 740-383-9944. That's 740-383-9944. We'll move on to the county commissioners, people in the county commissioner race. Marion County is in the high-risk zone for radon. What can be done to protect the buyers or renters from living in houses with radon? And we'll start with Mr. Stuyvesant.
I guess I didn't know that, be very truthful with you about that, but I guess we've had inspections in the past, and that failed. It was taken away, building inspections, and health department, I would assume, needs to work more with that, and have radon detectors in your homes and so forth, and educate people more on the problem with that. And I just didn't realize we had that big a problem. I know in my home I have a radar detector, so we haven't had any problems there, but yes, some of them do, and we need to work with the health department, the county health department, and educate people on that problem.
Mr. Whalen.
I'd heard the statistic, but I've never heard why we have a problem with radon in this area. But again, there are radon detectors out there in most newer homes that you see being built, and it's up to Marion Public Health to go out and do the inspections. We have to allow them to do basically what I thought the health department was set up to do, which was make sure that dwellings in this county are safe to live in and be occupied, whether that be personal or business. So very simple. Let the Marion Public Health Department do what they're supposed to do.
Thank you, Mr. Whalen. The next question is for all the candidates for state representative. What is your view on voucher programs that allow parents to use public funds to send their children to private schools? We'll start with Mr. McLean.
Well, those parents are paying taxes as well, so there should be school choice. One of the things that we've been lacking and we're working on is we need to make sure we've had some bad actors out there. We've had bad actors, public schools and charter schools. We've had a number of things that we've done. We're going to continue to go down the path that we're going to make sure they're accountable. In fact, I believe that we're probably going to start doing some things that are going to change the process when you become a charter school to make sure that we're weeding some of these things out. But I am a strong supporter of school choice, but at the same time we need to make sure that it's doing the same thing and we're making sure we're educating our kids.
Mr. Babick.
Well, I'll make this very clear and very quick. I oppose vouchers for charter schools. I believe that what we should be doing is shoring up our public school system. I think charter schools represent, to me, an attack on public education, particularly going after teachers' unions, and I do not support charter schools.
Ms. Polenda.
I believe that a parent has a fundamental right to choose how to educate their children. It is probably one of the most personal and important rights that a family has. With that said, the creation of a charter school, which is a basic concept of public funds used to run a privately owned industry, deserves some deeper examination by the legislature. Again, the Ohio Constitution vests us with the responsibility of educating our children, and there have been some real problems. I don't think that everything that we read in the paper is completely accurate, but it certainly has raised enough questions so that in this next General Assembly we're going to take a really hard look at how we allow these charter schools to begin to set up a school and how we make them more responsive and accountable throughout the process of their funding.
Thank you, Ms. Polenda. Again, you're listening to the League of Women Voters Candidates Night on WWGH Radio, and if you have a question you would like to submit, the telephone number is 740-383-9944. We now go back to the candidates for County Commissioner. How can we address the pollution in the Little Scioto River? We did that one too, didn't we? Yeah, we did that one. and we'll go back to all state representative candidates. What bills do you intend to sponsor if elected, re-elected? And we'll start with Ms. Polenda.
I'd like to talk very quickly about the bill that was just introduced. We had a press release on last Friday. I view my mission as your legislator and with the mind that we are here to protect Ohio's most vulnerable citizens. And I'm proud to sponsor House Bill 624. Hopefully it will be assigned to committee and will begin having hearings. This bill will create for the first time in Ohio a Ward's Bill of Rights designed to protect those who are in guardianships, designed to identify that these people, regardless of their level of capacity or incapacity, are human beings and they deserve the respect and dignity that all human beings deserve when being subject to a guardianship and under the control of another person. I am pro-life, and I see as my mission in that regard more adoption bills to make adoption a better incentive for birth parents who are considering their options.
Thank you, Ms. Polenda. Mr. McLean.
Well, with my positions that I hold, a lot of times I don't have a lot of time to do the smaller things like this. So one of the things that it won't have my name on it, but we'll be dealing with the severance tax again. The House passed it, the Senate did not. So that will either come back through the House or the governor will have something in the budget. And I will be managing the bills like that much more than otherwise. Just as an example, some of the things we've done in the last, there may be some things come up, is I was the sponsor on a pharmacy emergency bill that really originated right here in Marion County with a pharmacist. And it's for emergencies to make sure folks can get their what they need over the weekend until the ice storm, the flood ends. I also had a bill that revamped the Board of Tax Appeals. So we each have different areas, we have expertise, but it tends to be where my responsibilities just don't allow me a lot of time to go out on my own bills.
Mr. Babick.
Well, I wish I could promise everybody that I'm going to be introducing this piece of legislation or that piece of legislation, but the fact of the matter is that the Republican Party has a supermajority in the Ohio General Assembly. It'd be very difficult unless we obtain the majority to do anything of that sort. So I'm not going to kid you or fool you on that. But I will have to say that part of my time will be probably in a defensive position, trying to stop the Republican majority from taking away union rights for workers in this state. They tried with SB 5. They're trying again with right-to-work laws. So I'm going to be in a defensive mode, resisting every effort there is to clobber the middle class any more than they've already been clobbered.
Thank you. We're now going to move on to our candidates for county commissioner. What is your primary plan for bringing jobs to Marion County? Mr. Whalen.
As far as I can tell, Marion County Commissioner has two jobs. One is to administer the county. The other is to sell the county. And that is to sell the county to county residents on what they're doing, and also to sell the county on people outside of the county. And that means to the people that can bring businesses here. We have infrastructure. We have training. We have people. We have a great community here in Marion County. Not without some difficulties, but it's still a great community. And we have to go out and be proactive, contacting those businesses that we see in the trade magazines or that we hear through the grapevine that'll be building to come here. Just look at Marion. Come here, see what we have to offer. Once we get them into the county, I'm pretty sure that Marion County can sell itself. But we need to be out there and we need to go through. Anytime we hear something that may be a new factory, maybe a new anything, we need to be on top of it and making those phone calls.
Mr. Stuyvesant.
Yes, I think we have some other entities that we work with very closely. Can Do, our economic development, and the chamber is their goal is to retain the jobs that are already here or the businesses. I think Can Do is striving towards that, trying to bring in new business. There's several just started lately, and my philosophy always is, as county commissioner, I'm an ambassador for Marion County. Some counties in the very close vicinity to us have an abundance of funding, and they're able to give a lot of tax incentives to people to move into there. We've lost some from this county, went one county south because they're giving quite a bit of tax incentives, and we can give TIFs and so forth, and we're working on some of that with this 309 project for long-term economic development.
Thank you, Mr. Stuyvesant. Our next question is for all the candidates. Who endorses you? We'll start with Mr. Babick.
Well, I've received the endorsement from the OEA, Ohio Education Association. I've also received an endorsement from ASME. But the lack of my endorsements, other than those two, I consider that to be a badge of honor, as funny as that might sound, because it seems like many of our politicians are bought and paid for. If you just look at my opponent's campaign chest and you compare it to mine, you'll see that I'm being outspent probably 20 to 30 to 1. So look at my lack of endorsements, my lack of money coming into my campaign. I look at it as a badge of honor, one that I think voters should consider. You look at the big yard signs, you don't see many of my big yard signs out there, right? Somebody has to pay for those yard signs, and somebody gets their return on their investment.
Mr. Whalen.
I've been endorsed by the Marion County Democratic Club, as well as local labor, and most importantly by my family, which is something I think you need. I think all the candidates up here can say that throughout this year and anytime you run for office, you need your family support wholeheartedly, and they got to put up with a lot of sleepless nights and a lot of agitation and everything that goes on with the running and everything that goes into seeking a political office. So the endorsement from the family is almost the number one thing you can hope for.
Mr. Stuyvesant.
Thank you. Of course, I've been endorsed by Marion County Republican Club. I've also have a endorsement from Jim Jordan sent me a letter endorsing my campaign, and that meant a lot to me. I think the endorsement of the people that support my reelection and the future of Marion County, that's what I consider people that help in my fundraising and so forth, are many people have endorsed me by helping me run a good campaign and continue to serve the people of Marion County.
Mr. McLean.
Well, I've been endorsed by many folks. Most of them I haven't received a dime from. In fact, they are groups that believe that we should move Ohio forward. I've been endorsed by the Ohio Right to Life, NFIB, Farm Bureau, a lot of folks, and we don't want to bore you with that, but it's just a recognition of what we do. We're trying to move Ohio forward. We're trying to make people responsible for themselves too. We haven't talked about that a lot tonight, but a lot of the things we do, there's some people we can't help because they won't help themselves. But we try to go forward, and we try to make sure that we're making Ohio a better place.
Ms. Polenda.
I, too, would echo the fact that I've been endorsed by many entities, which I'll name, but I don't recall that I've received a dime from any of them. I've been endorsed by the Marion County Republican Party, the Ohio Republican Party, the Union County Republican Party, NFIB, NRA, for which I received an A rating, Buckeye Firearms Association, Ohioans for Concealed Carry, Ohio Restaurant Association, Ohio Right to Life, I'm a preferred candidate, and I can't think of others, but I think those are entities that look at our work as legislators, and their endorsement of us is a recognition of the sincerity of our work and our efforts on behalf of the citizens in our constituency.
Thank you, Ms. Polenda. We now have a question for the candidates in the commissioner's race. Describe how you will be accessible to the residents of Marion County, and we'll start with Mr. Stuyvesant.
Well, I think the people that know me know I'm very accessible to the people of Marion County. I enjoy my position. I don't call it a job, as I've said before. And my business card has my cell phone number on it, and that's with me pretty much about 20 hours a day, I think. And my office is always open. I'm there the majority of the time, and I think more people need to participate in county government by attending the commissioners' meetings. Yes, they're kind of boring, but at the end, we do have time for questions and answers. I wish more people would come and ask, what are you doing this week, or what's on the agenda, and questions about county government. And if I can't answer them right then, I surely will get back to them. I mean, we have lots of people call in with problems in different entities of the county government, and they think we can solve them, but there's some elected officials, department heads we
Thank
have
you,
no
Mr. Stuyvesant.
bearing on.
Mr. Whalen.
Communication is key, and I think it's not just waiting for the public to come to me, but for me to go out to the public. One thing I'd like to do, if elected, is to start at least a monthly newsletter from the county and all the county departments, treasurer, auditor, things that are coming up on the commissioner's docket, problems that we foresee, things that may be of importance to the community. Treasurer's office has when the taxes are coming due or going out, or when they to buy. Auditor has things like dog tags and things like that. So I think we can correlate all the things that are going on in the county, send them out electronically, maybe have some printed copies available through the Marion Star or on a website like Marion Online. But I think we can be proactive in this day and age. Lack of communication in the day of Twitter is not acceptable any longer.
Thank you, Mr. Whalen. Do want to remind the audience once again, this is the League of Women Voters Candidates Night, and you can call in your questions, 740-383-9944. Again, that's 740-383-9944. Our next question is for Ms. Polenda and Mr. McLean. What do you do to work across party lines? And we'll start with Ms. Polenda.
I believe that the most important thing we can do as legislators is to build relationships within the community, and also build relationships with other legislators. And I think Mr. McLean will tell you that I have the reputation in the legislature as being one of the Republicans that readily reaches across the aisle. I was one of the first legislators in the 130th to start jointly sponsoring bills with Democrats, because it has nothing to do with whether or not you're a Democrat or a Republican in terms of good legislation. And I need the Democrats to help me with the legislation. They're going to garner support in their quarters for a bill that I believe is very important. So I'm very proud of my good working relationships with the Democrats and the Republican in the Ohio General Assembly, and especially the House of Representatives. And I work daily on those relationships.
Mr. McLean.
You know, a little bit was made of the supermajority, but that's just a bunch of nonsense. Of my 3 bills I had in the last 2 years, 2 of them were co-sponsored by Democrats. We've passed about 30 bills from the Democrats in this House. After, when we were in the minority, got 0. We have worked with the Democrats. We are in the majority, so we are going to have more say than they are, but we include them in the process. And in fact, my opponent's campaign manager told me that he was in Columbus twice and couldn't find one Democrat to say a bad thing about me. So we must be cooperating.
Mr. Babick, do you have a rebuttal to that?
Well, yeah, I mean, you look at the news. I mean, the Tea Party, Mrs. Polanda got a challenge from her own party. The problem with the Republican Party today is they have to figure out how extreme they want to be. Do they want to be far right extreme, or do they want to just simply be extreme? So this goodwill and this good talk here, I wish we had a couple of Democratic legislators here who could also respond to that they have not been invited to the party, and that the cooperation has not been there. We need, simply put, more Democrats in the Ohio General Assembly in order to make it a more equal level playing field. And I hope to have your vote.
Ms. Polenda, if you would like a 30-second wrap-up.
Well, my record speaks for itself, and if in fact those Democrat legislators would be here tonight, they would say the very thing that I've said, that they really appreciate the fact that I go to them on a regular basis for their insight, their expertise, and their help on legislation.
Mr. McLean, would you like a 30-second wrap-up?
Yeah, just simply, one of the Democratic statewide office holders, John Patrick Carney, is a good friend of mine. I actually had him in Marion County on WMRM. We brought up and had a great discussion. We are working together.
Thank you. And I believe this is our final question of the evening, and this is to all of the candidates. Why do you think people should vote for you? And we will start with Mr. McLean.
Well, as I mentioned earlier, I asked for your vote 6 years ago. So I would stand on my record. We have worked very hard to make Ohio a better place. We have worked in conjunction with the minority party, and we have done it. It is not a perfect world yet. We still have work to do, but we have done a great many things to help the area. And I would ask for your vote to continue this process for 2 more years.
Mr. Babick.
Well, I'm just going to echo what I've said before, which is I come from the people. I've worked minimum wage jobs while putting myself through college. I had a working mom who raised me virtually alone with 4 older sisters. Somehow our politicians have become disconnected with us. They collect their paychecks, they go to their parties, they go to their fundraisers, and somebody's paying for those signs out there. I know it. Somebody's paying for those signs. And with me, you're going to get an unbossed alternative, and my literature is over at the counter if you'd like to check me out on Facebook.
Thank you, Mr. Babick. Mr. Whalen.
I am the challenger to this spot. I come in and I ask simply this: is Marion County in a better position today than it was 4 years ago? Do you believe 4 years from now, if you vote for my opponent, it'll be in a better spot? I've said this many a times to many different people. We cannot afford to wait idly by and hope that tomorrow will be different, that the change will happen. We have to make it happen. If we wait 4 more years to make sure it happens, how far will that set us back? I believe I'm the right candidate for the job because I have ideas, because I know I don't know all the answers, but I know a lot of people who do know those answers. I will not stop working for Marion County. I'll work tirelessly as I have everything I've ever done. And I hope that you find it in your heart to vote for me in 2 weeks. And thank you very much, the League of Women Voters.
Thank you, Mr. Whalen. Ms. Polenda.
I'm a wife. I'm a mother of 3 children. I have run a small business for 23 years, and I've been a trial lawyer for 31 of those years. Since being appointed to the legislature in 2011, I have made Marion my second home. I am here every Monday for Marion Mondays, typically very early in the morning till very late in the evening, meeting with constituents. And each person that I meet gives me a different perspective on why they are here in Marion, what's special about Marion, and what I need to do as your legislator to make it the best place to be, to live, to work, and to raise a family. So I would appreciate the privilege of continuing to represent you at the state level as your legislator.
Mr. Stuyvesant.
Well, I worked hard to get to this position, and I've worked tirelessly every day to make Marion County a better place to bring up a family, a community, to make businesses better. And I think you can talk to anyone in the county government or in Marion County that I've worked with on different projects, and they'll say he works hard every day to make Marion County a better place. I've made a lot of great friends on both sides, if you want to talk about it, the aisle. I'm a Marion County commissioner, but I'm a community servant for Marion County to make it a better place. And politics have no reasoning in what I do every day to make Marion a better place. And I think there's even people in this room that will agree with me that I've never shown any one way or the other. I have one Republican commissioner and one Democrat, and we work great together.
Thank you, Mr. Stuyvesant. And with that, that concludes the League of Women Voters Candidates Night here on WWGH Radio. I certainly want to thank the candidates and everybody who attended here in studio and everybody who has listened on radio or your electronic device. Thank the League of Women Voters for having this event here on WWGH Radio, and I think get out and vote. on Election Day. Everybody have a great night from the Marion Center Mall.